Wherever you are in the world, welcome to another edition of Jerry's Take on China. This one is very special. I've sought a lot of advice before making the decision to proceed with this. As a result of that advice, I'm linking an article in the description which contains links to all of the facts, as I usually do, as well as the documentation and the video which I'll be talking about. There'll be nothing in this video that I post which could be used to have YouTube remove it for IP violations. If you find what I'm suggesting hard to believe or hard to accept, or simply want verification, please inform yourself by reading and checking the sources of all my materials. I've downloaded for my own records a copy of all the relevant information, just in case it's removed from the internet at some future date. In this video and the accompanying article, I'm going to make a suggestion that the best interests of Australia are in dire need of review because of something the Australian Strategic Policy Institute may have done, ASPI. This could be confirmed with just one inquiry by someone in an official capacity who could verify that two of ASPI's corporate sponsors were in discussion with Defense Department officials at the time this happened. If that's confirmed, it means the entire process leading to a multi-billion-dollar contract was flawed, and the Australian tax-paying public have been deprived of billions of dollars which have gone to two non-Australian companies. Let's get into it. A report called Picking Flowers and Making Honey was written for the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, ASPI, in 2018. This report is a classic in that it sets the tone for exactly how ASPI manages to instill fear into the minds of Australians by exaggerating or even creating a threat and then linking it with China. Although to this day there have never been any confirmed cases, no charges or any convictions, the report of 2018 suggested Chinese military scientists were coming to Australia to learn military secrets. The author was invited as a guest onto an ABC show where he made the claim that the Chinese military scientists were working on, quote, projects like hypersonic missiles, unquote. His example, not mine, and I've linked that video in the article. Northrop Grumman and Raytheon are currently working on hypersonic missiles in Australia, but that contract was signed off on in 2020, almost 2 years after the report and interview which stated Chinese scientists could be stealing that technology. Once I saw this, I realized there were some grave concerns about the way in which ASPI works. But then there are also other elements which raised concerns related to the report and that subsequent ABC interview. It appears to have been a clear conflict of interest that those two companies, which are also two of ASPI's corporate sponsors, are almost certain to have been, at that time, involved in discussions with US and Australian governments about hypersonic missile research in Australia. Multi-billion-dollar research projects take years to come to fruition, and there's a link to that information too. In the interview, ABC's host Stan Grant does not disclose that he is, or most certainly was at that time, a senior fellow of ASPI. That matter was brought to public attention in 2020 by APAC News and has still never been disclosed to ABC's viewers. There's also a link to that. What was already known, but again not disclosed in the report or the interview, was that both China and Russia are, or were, according to most experts, more advanced than either Australia or the USA in hypersonic technology, and that information has been linked. It is known and has been stated by several leading academics and the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Organization, CSIRO, that Chinese scientists were contributing to Australian research at that time, and therefore highly unlikely they would place themselves at risk of being arrested for spying, stealing, or copying military secrets that they already possess. That's really interesting and wasn't mentioned in the introduction by ASPI's report. In fact, in a completely contrary indication, the US was apparently caught red-handed in 2022 in a well-documented attack on China's Northwest University, where hypersonic technology is being researched. Let's go back to December 2020. The Sydney Morning Herald reported that within months, Australia would begin testing US hypersonic missiles. It's very hard to imagine the example given of Chinese military scientists potentially stealing hypersonic secrets is a coincidence, given that they already had the technology and it was two of ASPI's corporate sponsors who ultimately won the contract in that same year that they made donations to ASPI. Let's look a little closely at the report, which I won't put up here, but it is linked in the article attached. As with many ASPI reports, Picking Flowers and Making Honey is littered with statements and opinions which are either unsupported or completely unsupportable. Proper decisions, especially at government foreign policy level, should, as much as possible, be based on facts and certainty. Modality can and should be used to establish that certainty and to provide veracity. Any report, when the writer selects modals of doubt over modals of certainty, must surely then be viewed as no more than an opinion. Let me explain. That something may have occurred 15 times in this report means the author doesn't know it did. The author also suggests something appears to have happened 12 times in this report. There are 6 occasions where the report states something could be happening, and none of them provide any evidence that they have or were happening. The words "it is unclear" have been used 4 times. There are in fact 37 significant indicators in this report of the presence of doubt. One paragraph relates to the promotion of a General Yang of the National University of Defense Technology, NUDT. Without support, it states the promotion was probably a recognition of the success with which Yan developed NUDT's international ties. The very secretive nature of this implied strategy to steal technology from Australian University really falls apart when the report on pages 9 and 10 itemized the fact that the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, quite openly states it has set up relationships and recruited foreign teachers. Some of these were English teachers to help students with IELTS and college English tests, CET. Their levels allow them to study overseas. Another opinion, without clear evidence, is that all students who go to Australia in this program appear to be Communist Party members. When the report insinuates the system could coerce Chinese scholars, or that students remain under close watch of the CCP, it raises some questions for me. Why do they need to be coerced or watched if they are, as also described in the report, intensively trained and have their ideology checked and are all members of the party? So this is a report so full of supposition and doubt and opinion. A clear example to support this lack of facts was definitely needed. To provide it, ASPI cites a case not in Australia but in America, not recent but 18 years old, where a retired Chinese-born US citizen of 40 years, whose parents exiled to Taiwan, was found to have collected confidential documents from his work with Boeing and sold them to people in China. There were no military secrets involved. He wasn't a student. He wasn't even connected to the PLA, and the theft took place over a 30-year period. That man, Greg Chung, was sentenced to 15 years imprisonment for the obscure offense of economic espionage. How ASPI links this historical anecdote to an imminent threat of ideological theft by Chinese military scientists is an incredible leap of literary logic. Perhaps the greatest contradiction of the ASPI report occurs in the introduction, where it glossed over the fact that several academics reported some of, and this is a quote, the greatest scientific achievements of recent times, which have come from collaboration with Chinese scientists. Several universities, including the University of New South Wales, Curtin University, and again the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Organization, are even mentioned as having defended their collaboration as positive for Australia. One has to ask, who is making the honey? The available evidence is that Chinese scientists have helped Australian research. The available evidence proves that China is already far more advanced in hypersonic technology. And the available evidence proves that ASPI's corporate sponsors had much to lose if China were to share that technology for peaceful purposes with Australia. No evidence has ever been presented of any theft of secrets from Australia by a Chinese researcher, Chinese scientist, Chinese student, military or otherwise. In fact, all the evidence I can see is that bees make honey and are good for humanity. ASPI seems in this instance to be more like a destructive wasp aiming to destroy the bees, and while they're at it, a fairly large slice of humanity. As with everything, please like, share, subscribe, and feel free to question this. Read the article, look at my sources, question them. It sure looks like ASPI were paid to create a threat by their donors, and having done so, their donors have now made billions of dollars. Australia needs to look very, very closely at this one. Thanks once again for watching. Please check in next time with Jerry's Take on China. See you then.